Today marks 4 years since the Russian invasion of Ukraine by massive military forces. That occurred on February 24th on 2022. 8 years before that, the Russians had occupied Crimea illegally and unlawfully and immorally. And during that 8 year period, they were involved in a number of subversion and infiltrations into Ukraine. So, what we've seen is really continuous war in the last 12 years by Russia against Ukraine. And all of this is a violation of the United Nations Charter by a United Nations Security Council member, meaning Russia. And Russia is one of the 5 permanent members charged with keeping the peace in the world. And it doesn't do that. It went into Ukraine without any authorization from the United Nations. And that is wrong. It is against the UN Charter. It is immoral. So what we basically have are crimes of aggressive war, violating the sovereignty of another country, both of which are dealt with in the UN Charter. Sovereignty of countries is protected by the UN Charter. Aggressive war is outlawed in Article 2, Section 4. And then genocide. You have ongoing genocide by the Russians against the Ukrainians. And I've spoken about the charges that have been brought up against Putin and others and the ongoing efforts to bring them to justice. Like I said, before 2022, the Russians were engaged in low-intensity conflict in Ukraine. They violated the Minsk agreements. They did not act in good faith. They did not act in goodwill. They were trying to take over Ukraine by manipulating Yanukovych. The Maidan Revolution was the people of Ukraine saying, we don't want to be controlled by the Russians. That was people exercising their agency as free people and as people do. And so they stood up to the Russians and they kicked out Yanukovych and they really gained their independence. Yanukovych had made a promise to go towards the EU and he reneged on it, and so he left. Or he was pushed out or he quit. And so what we've seen since 2022, but what we've seen since then, since we saw what we saw a lot at that time in March 22, were a lot of lies, a lot of disinformation. Some of these lies I've talked to you about is NATO was going to attack Russia. That was one of the lies. Okay, another lie was the Nazis are in Ukraine. Another one is Zelensky's a pervert. Russia's a Christian nation. These are all lies. That the evil West wants to destroy Russia. That the West is in decline. Russia is fighting for civilization. These are all lies. A lot of people fell under the spell of these for a while. I fell under the spell of it for a while until I started doing my own homework. And I started to realize that these are lies. Russia's based on lies. Putin deals in lies. Russians breathe lies. Lies are like breathing to the Russians. And what you have the Russians want an empire. Their whole country, their whole identity is based on a lie. I deal with it in a recent article in the American Proposition. I'll leave the link below. But I've also dealt with it in other videos about the lies that Russia is based on. But what you have in Russia is you have a supernationalism. And supernationalism is a disorder under the natural law, under any rational teaching. That's a disorder. They need to conquer to have an empire. Well, the conquest of land by force has been outlawed by international law. And the people who came up with that idea, as I said earlier, were the Americans. We said you don't get to take property by force and keep it. That was the Stimson Doctrine in 1931. And then, of course, the Prohibition Against Aggressive War was another American idea. And that was Frank Kellogg, 1929, the Kellogg-Briand Pact. He added to the whole Kellogg-Briand Pact, Frank Kellogg added the idea of multilateralism. We're all working together. Americans have always been multilateral. I mean, we've had bilateral treaties, yeah, but we've always seen in the last 100 or so years the need to work multilateral together. Okay, so in these 4 years, a lot has happened. Okay, the reality is Russian losses are outrageous. According to Minfin, They've had 1,261,420 casualties. That's as of today. They're losing about 1,000 a day in casualties. Some people put it as high as 1.5. Minfin is kind of a conservative data source, 1,261,000 plus. Um, at the Munich Security Conference a week ago, or 10 days ago, President Zelenskyy said that they are killing more Russians, or wounding more, killing and wounding more Russians than the Russians are bringing into their military. And that was the case in January. More casualties in the Ukraine war by the Russians than the Russians were bringing into their military. It's stunning. Okay, tanks, 11,698 tanks the Russians have lost. These numbers are huge, folks. That's huge. That's divisions just being wiped out. Armored vehicles, 24,086. Artillery systems, 37,560 destroyed. MLRSs, 1,654 destroyed. Anti-aircraft warfare, 1,305 anti-aircraft warfare systems destroyed, 435 planes destroyed, 348 helicopters, UAVs over 145,000, cruise missiles 4,347, ships 29. That seems low. I think that they've lost more than 29 ships. Basically, their Black Sea fleet had to depart the Black Sea. Submarines, they've lost 2 submarines. The Russians have gained 12% of Ukraine per the Center for Strategic and International Studies. 12% in 4 years, with 1.25 million casualties. In 4 years of World War II, we were involved in World War II for less than 4 years. We had over 400,000 casualties, battle casualties. And that is a third of what the Russians have had. Um, the Russians have gained 12% of Ukraine per CSIS. Many knowledgeable commentators, and if you study the reports of what's going on, gains are made per meter. Okay, per meter. Putin said he would destroy Ukraine, take it over in 3 days. We're now at day 1,462. The Defense of Democracy says that the Russian are incapable of a military breakthrough. That is of earlier today. They said it's called the FDD, Defense of Democracies. So there's no way the Russians are going to be able to break through. Russian economy is bad. A number of sources talk about bankruptcies, debt, inflation. Um, the oil infrastructure is being struck regularly by the Ukrainians. We're striking deep into Russian territory. Um, Moscow and other Russian cities simply don't have power. That's due to a number of sources. Putin is shutting down social media to include Telegram or Telegraph. I guess it's Telegram, right? Um, and in the meantime, NATO is enlarged. The EU is stronger. According to a poll by the Special Eurobarometer, uh, it's just an overwhelming majority of Europeans want a strong EU. We're talking 2/3 to 3/4. Uh, the regrets for Brexit are increasing. According to Statista, since the summer of 2022, more than 50% of the people have consistently said they regret Brexit. Orban's in trouble. April 12th is the election. Likely he will be defeated. People in Georgia continue marching 450 days. Continue marching against the Russian dictator, Russian government that's been installed by a Russian oligarch or an oligarch who's loyal to the Russians. Um, U2 just put out an album, and there's a song in there called Yours Eternally. I'll put a link to it below. Very powerful. It was done with, I think, Ed Sheeran and also a Ukrainian group called Antikia. Very powerful tune. When I saw it, I realized Ukrainians aren't going to give up. And the Russians are feeling enormous pain right now. And you have to understand that Putin's regime is in trouble. Um, a number of commentators, including William Browder, has said that Putin has to keep the war going. He can't stop the war because the minute he stops the war, then the soldiers are going to come home and they're going to overthrow him. There are a number of different changes, according to Jay and Kiev, Jason Smart. I'm sorry, Jason Smart. A number of changes in the internal organization of the Russian armed forces, indicating that Putin is afraid of a coup, and so he is strengthening his National Guard forces. Um, it is Okay, so then there's some polls on world leaders right now. Zelensky is the most popular. President Zelensky of Ukraine is the most popular world leader per a YouGov poll from February 12th. He's above water by 14. The most unpopular, no, it's not Trump. The most unpopular is Putin, and he's below water 73 points. So Putin has taken a hit around the world. People don't like him. The international order is under attack. You've heard me say that. There's no doubt. But at the same time, I was just at a conference, and at the same time, the international order is stronger, actually, than ever before, because there are a number of initiatives that are designed to bring justice and to prosecute the criminals in Russia. And a lot of other countries, a lot of other agencies, a lot of other groups are taking these principles that America brought into the world and helped bring into the world, and are taking these principles and implementing them. What is happening right now is Zelensky is viewed as the defender, really, of the world order, of the natural law. Um, he's defending the Christian order. Ukraine is saving civilization against the Russians, who were, lied about, told that they were Christians, etc., but they're not. There's all sorts of stuff you can find on X and other places about how Russians torture uh, people, rape people, just horrible crimes that are being committed. But records are being kept, and they will all be brought to justice. Um, there are a couple of other really good things that I think we need to understand. Russia and our enemies are now in the open as a result of this war. Okay, for 4 years now, Putin has not been able to bring Ukraine to heel, and I don't think he can. And so Russia and their supporters and their sycophants and their disinformation influencers, they're all out in the open, and all the lies that they've been telling, all been identified. We know who our enemies are. We know what they're saying. We know there's something called disinformation. So actually, Putin helped to get a lot of people aware to the danger that we were in, not just with his invasion of Ukraine, but around the world. And we see a lot of lies and a lot of badness and evil coming out of Russia. And Putin's invasion of Ukraine has awakened many people all over the world to this. Um, Russia's losing, and I truly believe, there's still going to be a lot of dark days up ahead. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of dark days up ahead, but I believe that we are preparing for a counterpunch against the tyrants that will strengthen the world order even more and bring peace and prosperity to the peoples of the world. Um, and I think what we will see is even a better and stronger American world order. Thank you.